text or 20th verse, and we didn't finish it completely yesterday, so we will today. Najayate mriyate vakadachin nayam bhutva bhavitavana bhuya ajo nitya sasvato yam purano nahanyate hanyamane sarire. For the soul, there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. So this is good news for all of us. It means that our soul is eternal, so we can never really die. Eternal in the past, eternal in the present, and eternal in the future. So the whole idea that you only live once and then you die and then you either go to hell or you go to heaven, it's all nonsense. You have eternal life, but you have to be careful, because if you're a nonsense person, you can eternally suffer in the material world, birth, death, old age, and disease, or you can eternally go back to Godhead and have pure loving devotion with Krishna himself and all the great devotees that are liberated eternally. Okay, so this verse says, for the soul there's neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. So we read some of this already. So let me go to the second page of this verse, where it says, the soul is full of knowledge, or full always with consciousness. Therefore, consciousness is a symptom of the soul. Even if one does not find the soul within the heart where he is situated, one can still understand the presence of the soul simply by the presence of consciousness. Sometimes we do not find the sun in the sky owing to clouds or for some other reason, but the light of the sun is always there, and we are convinced that it is therefore daytime. As soon as there is a little light in the sky early in the morning, we can understand that the sun is in the sky. Similarly, since there is some consciousness in all bodies, whether man or animal, we can understand the presence of the soul. This consciousness of the soul is, however, different from the consciousness of the Supreme Personality Godhead, because the Supreme Consciousness is all knowledge, past, present, and future. The consciousness of the individual soul is prone to be forgetful. When he is forgetful of his real nature, he obtains education and enlightenment from the superior lessons of Krishna. But Krishna is not like the forgetful soul. If so, Krishna's teachings of Bhagavad Gita would be useless. There are two kinds of souls, namely the minute particle soul, Anu-Atma, and the super soul, Vibhu-Atma. This is also confirmed in the Katha Upanishad in this way. Anur aniyan mahato mahiyan, atmasya jantur nihito guhayam, tamakruta pasyati vita soko, datu prasadan mahimanam atmana. Both the super soul, Paramatma, and the atomic soul, Jivatma, are situated on the same tree of the body, within the same heart of the living being, and only one, who has become free from all material desires, as well as lamentations, can, by the grace of the Supreme, understand the glories of the soul. Krishna is the fountainhead of the super soul also, as it will be disclosed in the following chapter. And Arjuna is the atomic soul, forgetful of his real nature. Therefore, he requires to be enlightened by Krishna or by his bona fide representative, the spiritual master. Okay, so this is a wonderful purport. And our the main points being made here is that the soul is full of knowledge, or always with consciousness. Therefore, consciousness is the symptom of the soul. So when it says the soul is full of knowledge, well, yeah, because the soul has experienced many births and deaths. So obviously, it is full of knowledge. We might not be able to remember it, but we experienced all those births and deaths. And therefore, if we engage in devotional service, you'll see that you'll have a natural, let's say, attraction to understanding your relationship with Krishna, because you've had many births and deaths in the past. And if you were Krishna conscious in the past, that means that from the point you stopped in the previous life, you'll that becomes a given, and you'll start from the point you stopped. You don't start all over again. So therefore, you will naturally, let's say, awaken uh, your remembrance of previous lives, let's say services that you've done, and you'll now start from the point that you stopped in the previous life. Now, what did I just say? That you will remember? No, not exactly remember, but you will naturally start from the point you stopped. And you'll see it happen very quickly, because you'll be attracted to devotees, and very quickly you'll take up Krishna consciousness. And whether you know it or not, you'll come to the point where you stopped in your previous life, and now you're making more advanced Krishna consciousness. There are people like that. People come and very quickly they take the Krishna consciousness, and they make a lot of devotional advancement. Why? Because they were already devotees previously. Just like Beethoven. Look him up, Beethoven. When he was 5 years old, he started playing the piano really well. That's because he was doing it in his previous life. And he started very young and very accomplished. What's it say about Beethoven?
Ludwig van Beethoven.
What?
Is a Ludwig van
Yeah,
Beethoven
okay.
was a German composer.
Look where it says when he was a young boy.
He started playing at the 5.
And when he was 5 years old, he started playing the piano.
Mm-hmm.
You see? And he probably started writing music also, not very far after that. Because he was already in his previous life very advanced. And we see that in children today. Sometimes at a young age, they become very proficient in some kind of, whether it could be music or poetry or whatever, because they're just picking up from where they left in their previous life. Okay, so that means that
Is that progress from the past life? Is it stored at the soul level, or is it at the subtle body?
well, it's a good question. The subtle body is the repository of all remembrances.
Hmm.
But the the energy is coming from your soul.
Correct.
But it's like, you have a computer and it's able to also save things, right?
Hmm.
So when you have a soul, we have a mind. We have a mind. So the mind receives information and is able to save information also. So when you have a spirit soul and it's functioning properly, you will not exactly remember what you did before, but you'll be able to do things very easily that you were already doing in the previous life. You'll have an penchant for it. Like Beethoven, 5 years old, he started playing the piano because he was already playing the piano in his previous life. Yeah. And we see that when a child is like, 5 years old or 10 years old, they pick up an instrument and they very quickly make advancement with it, especially if they have a teacher.
So is this like devotional service? It will start from where they left off.
Yeah.
Even music, Maharaj.
Well, yes. Yes. They already did it in their past life. They pick up, but it's a little bit different when you're talking about spiritual advancement, because spiritual advancement is a very serious thing. And music, if you're playing the saxophone and making money by playing the saxophone, and then you die, and then the next life you start playing the saxophone again, that's not really something significant. But if you were Krishna conscious in previous life and you take it up right away, when very close to when you're born, that's a significant thing because it's Krishna consciousness. Anything related to Krishna is significant. Anything that is mundane is not so significant because it's not going to really help one become free from the cycle of birth and death. Okay, so
Beethoven first he composed several pieces by his early teens. His first published work, a set of keyboard variations, appeared when he was just 12 years old.
it's pretty good.
By 12, he started composing music, publishing.
He was a genius. When he's 12 years old, he's producing, what's called profound music. I don't know if he was a believer in Jesus. I guess he was. What's it say about his spiritual life?
Believe that there is evidence that he believed in God, had a belief in God, and had Christian values.
Okay. So he believed in God and he had Christian values.
There's another thing. I believe that the Christian God was an illusion.
Was what?
So Christian God was an illusion. That's what he was.
What?
Illusion.
Illusion. Yeah. I think this is some other references.
Oh, we just said he believed in God.
While Beethoven's exact views on Jesus and Christianity are not explicitly documented, it is clear that he had a belief in God and held spiritual values that influenced his life and work.
Oh, no, sir. Yeah.
His compositions, particularly his sacred music, reflect a deep sense of spirituality and reverence, even if his relationship with organized religion was ambivalent. Beethoven can be characterized as a person with profound spiritual beliefs shaped by his Catholic upbringing and personal experiences.
Mhm.
He didn't like the organized religion.
Yeah, you see, a lot of people are like that. They don't like organized religion. So they'll say, "I'm spiritual, but I don't believe in, organized religion." Well, you can understand that in a sense because uh, if you see, like priests, Catholic priests, and they're, uh, and they are engaged in child molestation and things like that, it really turns you off from the priesthood, you know, and you start to get cynical and think, oh, they're all like that, which is not true.
Also, there was one case of
Yeah.
some mega church.
Yeah.
Some settlement happened where he was caught improper relationship with a minor or something.
In Seattle?
Not in Seattle. I think this is in Texas.
Oh, in Texas. Okay. You reading it now?
Let me just see it. It was on the news. Yeah, Texas mega church accepts senior pastor's resignation after allegations of inappropriate relationship with a minor.
It's one of the worst things you can do. Really
In the
do.
name of religion.
Yeah. Terrible. Okay. So this verse, and we'll go to verse 21 now. Sorry. Veda vinasinam nityam ya inam ajam avyayam. Katam sa purusha partha tam gataya tikhantikam. This verse says, O Partha, how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible, eternal, unborn, and immutable kill anyone or cause anyone to kill? Purport. Everything has its proper utility, and a man who is situated in complete knowledge knows how and where to apply a thing for its proper utility. Similarly, violence also has its utility, and how to apply violence rests with the person in knowledge. Although the justice of the peace awards capital punishment to a person condemned for murder, the justice of the peace cannot be blamed because he orders violence to another person according to the codes of justice. In Manusamhita, the law book for mankind, it is supported that a murderer should be condemned to death so that in his next life, he will not have to suffer for the great sin he has committed. Therefore, the king's punishment of hanging a murderer is actually beneficial. Similarly, when Krishna orders fighting, it must be concluded that violence is for supreme justice. And thus, Arjuna should follow the instruction, knowing well that such violence committed in the act of fighting for Krishna is not violence at all, because at any rate, the man, or rather the soul, cannot be killed. So, for the administration of justice, so-called violence is permitted. A surgical operation is not meant to kill the patient, but to cure him. Therefore, the fighting to be executed by Arjuna at the instruction of Krishna is with full knowledge. So there is no possibility of sinful reaction. Okay, now here we come to a what you would call a principle that could be very easily, let's say, abused. So, what is bona fide violence? What is non-bona fide violence? So, in the history of the world, there's always been, religious wars, and so you have, the people who are, religious, and sometimes they fight with people who are, barbarian. So one side is supposed to be the religious side, the other side is supposed to be the barbarian. But throughout history, there's been many abuses of this whole idea of sacred war. There are, however, bona fide situations in which you can kill a person. We're going to see that. I don't think we've come up to that point yet. Let me see. One second. Just looking real quick. Have to fast forward. See what that information. Anyway, we're going to read soon the bona fide permission to kill people. Like, if they try and burn down your house or kidnap your
reasons why.
6 of them. Yeah. Let's see if I can find it. It's in this chapter.
Yeah, this is in this chapter, but I thought we covered that in the.
We may have. Well, if someone tries to burn your house or kidnap your wife or children, and there are 6 different things that I don't see it now. Anyway, in this verse, it says that everything has its proper utility. And a man who is situated in complete knowledge knows how and where to apply a thing for its proper utility. Similarly, violence also has its utility. And how to apply violence rests with the person in knowledge. Although the justice of the peace awards capital punishment to a person condemned for murder, the justice of the peace cannot be blamed because he orders violence to another person according to the codes of justice. In the Manu Samhita, the law book for mankind, it is supported that a murderer should be condemned to death so that in his next life, he will not have to suffer for the great sin he has committed. Now, let me stop right there, So that was a general understanding previously. But then we fast forward the 20th century, and in many states of the United States, they have forbidden capital punishment. So if you murder someone, they don't kill you. Thinking that, oh, well, that's a very mean thing to do. But it's just the opposite, because here it's saying that it's beneficial for the person to be killed, to be hung or whatever, because he will not suffer as much, in his next life. But if he doesn't pay for the injustice that he's done, then the suffering will be even worse.
The verse where the 6 reasons to kill an enemy, aggressor, is given in the first chapter 36.
Oh, okay.
In the first chapter.
Okay, good. According to Vedic injunctions, there are 6 kinds of aggressor. 1, a poison giver. 2, one who sets fire to the house. 3, one who attacks with deadly weapons. 4, one who plunders riches. 5, one who occupies another's land. And 6, one who kidnaps a wife. Such aggressors are at once to be killed, and no sin is incurred by killing such aggressors. Such killing of aggressors is quite befitting any ordinary man. But Arjuna was not an ordinary person. He was saintly by character, and therefore he wanted to deal with them in saintliness. This kind of saintliness, however, is not for a Kshatriya. Although a responsible man in the administration of a state is required to be saintly, he should not be cowardly. For example, Lord Rama was so saintly that people even now are anxious to live in the kingdom of Lord Rama, Rama Raja. But Lord Rama never showed any cowardice. Ravana was an aggressor against Rama because Ravana kidnapped Rama's wife, Sita. But Lord Rama gave him sufficient lessons, unparalleled in the history of the world. In Arjuna's case, however, one should consider the special type of aggressors, namely his own grandfather, own teacher, friends, sons, grandsons, etc. Because of them, Arjuna thought that he should not take these severe steps necessary against ordinary aggressors. He should not take the severe steps necessary against ordinary aggressors. Besides that, saintly persons are advised to forgive. Such injunctions for saintly persons are more important than any political emergency. Arjuna considered that rather than kill his own kinsmen for political reasons, it would be better to forgive them on grounds of religion and saintly behavior. He did not therefore consider such killing profitable simply for the matter of temporary bodily happiness. After all, kingdoms and pleasures derived therefrom are not permanent. So why should he risk his life and eternal salvation by killing his own kinsmen? Arjuna's addressing of Krishna as Madhava, or the husband of the goddess of fortune, is also significant in this connection. He wanted to point out to Krishna that as husband of the goddess of fortune, he should not induce Arjuna to take up a matter which would ultimately bring about misfortune. Krishna, however, never brings misfortune to anyone, to say nothing of his devotee. So in this purport, it's explaining Arjuna's arguments why he should not fight. But in that particular situation, he's wrong. And Krishna is going to point it out that he's wrong. But if an ordinary person reads this without, coming to class, and they would think, well, Arjuna is a really good guy, and everything he's saying here is just, it's correct. And I don't understand why Krishna's trying to make him fight. So that's why I have to come to class to get the real understanding of what's going on. So the problem is that Arjuna, the whole question is, do I follow what Krishna says, or do I not follow what Krishna says? Right. So in life, we have to make some decisions. So if Krishna says we should fight, then we should fight. If he says don't fight, then we should not fight. Now there are gray areas even in that type of, and we'll come to those soon. But in this particular case, Arjuna is willing not to fight, and he's completely wrong. Why? Well, because it doesn't matter that your relatives on both sides. What matters is, what is the side that's going to protect Sanatana Dharma, the eternal occupational duty of living entities. So if you look at it like that, Arjuna is on the side of Sanatana Dharma. And the people on the other side are not. And trying to strip Draupadi and things like that. So those are very serious, faults. Now, even though Bhisma Pitamaha, Dronacharya, they didn't try to strip her, but they didn't try to stop it. So therefore, they were also sinful. You don't just sit by and let someone defile a woman. That's completely wrong. So that's why they had to die. And also because they were salaried by Duryodhana and they were eating the food that Duryodhana was giving them. Therefore, they were not able to do the right thing. So that's a very important thing to think about. When you eat the food of unholy people, and when you are salaried by unholy people, you become compromised. Because you're salaried, you're afraid they might, kick you out, lose your job. See, that's why a real, let's say, Brahmana will never work for anyone. So we got so many Brahmanas, say, well, I work at Microsoft. Oh, I work here, I work there. So the problem is that when you work with someone, sometimes there's situations in which you're forced to do, let's say, wrong things, lying or cheating, and so forth. And therefore, genuine, let's say, Brahmanas never work for somebody. And they usually have a vow of poverty. In other words, they might receive large donations, but they give most of it away to needy people. And they just keep enough to maintain themselves and their wife and kids, but not live extravagantly at all. They live very, very simply, or they're supposed to. So nowadays you see, so-called Brahmanas have gold chains and driving a very expensive car, big house and watches and things like that, right? Gold rings and silver. No, but basically one has to have a minimalist life if they're going to be a Brahmana, and spend more time, chanting Hare Krishna and helping people become Krishna conscious than simply trying to increase their bank accounts. Okay. So, yeah.
Time check, or you want to?
Oh, okay. Are there any questions anyone would like to ask? Where was?
Today's verse 21,
Yeah.
we talked about bona fide violence, right?
Yes.
We
So,
were still in the
Muslims-
20th, right? 21.
So Muslims, in the name of God, they kill people and they say it is a bona fide violence. Jihad.
Jihad. Yeah.
I mean, almost all the wars, even wars that America fights,
Yeah.
they put the good versus evil spin, and
Yes.
they justify it as a moral war.
Yeah. I mean, when Bush Bush's son,
Yeah.
when they were gonna fight with
Iraq.
Iraq, they called my famous evangelist, who unfortunately has died, and they went to the National Capital Church. It was a beautiful church.
You're referring to Jesse Jackson?
No.
Mhm.
And they prayed, uh, before they were going to go to war. So it's called the National Cathedral. Look that up. National Cathedral. It's in Washington, D.C. It's a gorgeous building. I've been there once. And Bush and all the cabinet members and, a lot of dignitaries. And they had the famous Christian preacher. What's his name? I don't think of it. Anyway, they had a big
Billy Graham.
Billy Graham, yes. They had Billy Graham there, and they were all praying to God, please protect our soldiers, and we have to. They're going to go and fight to for the right reason. It was a big thing. They all went to church, and did you look that up? The National Cathedral.
Yeah, he basically did a prayer service at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. on March 17th, 2003. This service, often referred to as Prayer for Peace,
Right.
included several key religious leaders who prayed alongside him. Some of the prominent figures were Reverend Billy Graham, Reverend Franklin Graham, Reverend
As a father and son.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Reverend Kirbizon Caldwell, Reverend Dr. Robert H. Cardinal Theodore McCarrick, Reverend Nathan Baxter, Imam also, there is an Imam, Yeshua Kendi, and then there is also Rabbi Joshua Haberman.
Yeah, it was a big, let's say, prayer.
An interfaith
Yeah,
prayer.
interfaith prayer. They were praying, that the American soldiers were going to go to battle, and kill people, and for their protection or whatever, to have God's blessing. That's basically. Of course, the whole thing was nonsense because what's his name didn't have any weapons of mass destruction.
Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein. Yeah. The whole thing was a hoax. It was all based on lies. That was correct, right? They were going after Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein.
He didn't have any
Weapons of mass.
Yeah, he didn't have any weapons of mass destruction. They lied. Colin Cowell. Is his name Colin? Yeah.
Colin Powell.
Colin Cowell. Yeah.
Colin Powell. Yeah.
Colin Powell. Yeah.
Yeah.
He lied. He went on television. Said the whole country said, "Oh, we have the evidence, of weapons of mass destruction. That's why we're going to go to war." There were no weapons of mass destruction. So the whole thing, and there's this book I wrote. There's a very interesting quote by an Englishman that says that the first uh, the first uh, uh, the first thing that the first thing that dies is the truth.
Yeah.
Whenever there's war.
The truth is the first casualty.
Yeah. Exactly. Where is that? I'm looking in the right place. That's a great quote by the. Come on. And where is it? The first casualty of war is the truth. There. And it should be here. With one more time.
Apparently, the ancient Greek playwright Aeschylus.
Okay. That was his statement?
Yeah. And then later it has been popularized by American Senator Hiram Johnson during the World War One.
The first casualty is the truth.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The first casualty of war is true.
What?
The first casualty of war
It's the truth.
is true.
Oh, I can't find it.
So then everything is relative right now.
Relative to
Yeah.
what?
In the sense like what is good for me is evil for you. What is evil for you is good for me. I mean, what is good for one nation is evil for the other nation, and what is evil for the other nation is good for them. When everybody says that they are doing it for in the name of their religion, in the name of their God, or in the name
What people forgot was that this was the first time America went to war against a country that did not first try and go to war with America. You know, Saddam Hussein did not ever do anything to go against America. It was the first time that America went in a preemptive war. They had never done that before. America always had the good, uh, the good moral, let's say,
High ground.
yeah, they always had the high ground that they only went to war when they were attacked. Now that was the first time they went to war where they were not attacked, and on false premises. That
So Vietnam War was also
what?
the Vietnam War.
Yeah,
So was it like the item that was also preemptive war, right? Or no?
Vietnam War.
Uh-huh.
The Vietnam War
That's the
was
worst war in the American states. He said.
not the worst, but that's from the Vietnam War started this cycle of American army losing battles,
Yeah.
right? And right before that, there was the Korean War. That was the first time the Americans started losing battles. Before that, there was World War II, World War I. America was winning both those wars. Korean War, they basically lost that war, and then the next one was the Vietnam War. They lost that one.
Mhm.
Well, when I say they lost, they could easily have won if they wanted to. They had the atomic bomb, right? They didn't. They didn't use those, high quality weapons. They were just basically, what were they doing in the Vietnam War? They went to war basically to stop the hippies from, basically destroying, faith in the government. So whenever there's a possibility of the government being overthrown by different quarrels and so things, so they have a war, and then the war takes people's minds off of internal politics, and they sort of join together to fight the war.
Mhm.
So when it was Johnson, I think,
Johnson.
Lyndon Johnson. But before him, this war started by somebody else.
So the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
So first U.S. Involvement started in supporting South Vietnam.
Yes.
That was under the President Eisenhower and Kennedy. So they
Is that what that
provided.
says? Okay.
That was in 1954 to 1960.
Yeah.
And then 1960, the National Liberation Front or Vietnam Congress was formed in South Vietnam to overthrow the Diem government. And then later in 61 to 63, the escalation started happening under Kennedy and Johnson. So Kennedy increased the U.S. military advisors and aid to South Vietnam. By end of 1963, there were about 16,000 U.S. military personnel in Vietnam. Then 1964, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, where U.S. naval vessels reported being attacked by North Vietnamese forces, led to the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. The resolution passed by Congress gave Lyndon B. Johnson broad authority to use military force in Vietnam. So that was kind of so 1964 that happened, and then 1965 is the direct military involvement. So in response to escalating Viet Cong attacks, the perceived threat of communist expansion, President Johnson authorized Operation Rolling Thunder, a sustained bombing campaign against North Vietnam. Additionally, first U.S. combat troops landed in Vietnam in March of 1965. And then from 1965 to 68, U.S. steadily increased its military presence, peaking at over 500,000 troops by 1968. Then 1968, the Tet Offensive, a coordinated series of attacks by Viet Cong and North Vietnamese forces, significantly impacted US public opinion and led to increased anti-war sentiment. Although militarily repelled, it's a psychological victory for the communists, showing that the war was far from over. And finally, 1969 to 73, Richard Nixon de-escalated the war, gradually withdrawing US forces. In 1973, Paris Peace Accord was signed, and then the rest of the people were withdrawn.
Yeah, the whole thing was nonsense because, I mean, if the United States wanted to win the war, they could have done it right away. You know, they had the atomic bomb. They had so many weapons. They could have finished off the North Vietnamese, but they didn't really want to. They actually wanted the war to continue. Why? Well, number one, you have the companies that produce weapons in the United States, so it's very lucrative for them. And number two is that they were worried about the whole hippie movement. So by forcing young people, especially blacks, to get into the army and go over there and get killed, it would, put there was another problem they get rid of. Too many because a lot of blacks were, in 1968, I remember there were riots all over the United States. There were shooting riots between the blacks and the government. And I know in Philadelphia, Columbia Avenue, there was like a war zone. Blacks had guns and they're trying to kill the police. And our church, the church I was going to, was in that neighborhood. So we couldn't even go to church because they were shooting. Right? There was like a war going on, like a civil war. So just they eventually, the United States eventually killed a lot of the black, what do you call this? The black, anyway, the blacks that were organized to fight, and they killed the leaders, wiped them out really quickly, or put them in jail.
Some kind of resistance.
What?
Some kind of resistance movement.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. So you see, there was civil war at that time, and certain, not all over the country, but in certain areas. In Philadelphia, there was definitely shooting going on a lot, for some period of time, maybe a couple of weeks. And it looked like there was going to be a big civil war, but the United States, squashed it very quickly. So we see that the the ability to wage war that's not necessary. It's a political decision for different reasons. Not because Vietnam never did anything wrong to the United States. Vietnam never tried to invade the United States. The United States was invading Vietnam. And basically, Vietnam is not an important country. Why they would want to go to war with them is incomprehensible and send soldiers. I think about 50,000 American soldiers died.
Yeah.
It was completely unnecessary. You can understand if the United States went to war with China, that you can understand, because China is a threat. And General, what was it, Marshall, I think his name was. And after World War II, when there was a Korean War, he wanted to use the atomic bomb on China because China was supporting the North Koreans. And a lot of American soldiers died in that war also. And but when he insisted on using the atomic bomb, I think it was Harry Truman, because the president of the United States is in charge of the troops, he fired the general that wanted to do it. But the general was right. They should have bombed. They should have used the atomic bomb on China at that time. China didn't have an atomic bomb, at that time. But there's they didn't really want to win the war, and they didn't. The Korean War, they didn't. There was it just caused a lot of dead men, but not really. The United States didn't win a war, So this is the problem. See, when the government doesn't want to win a war, that means a lot of young kids are going to die unnecessarily.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of people, like myself, also we avoided getting into the army. Although I was called up to go into the army, but I found an excuse to get out. Whereas I saw other people at the, when you had the medical examination, there were a lot of other people. They were, gung ho to get into the army. I said, I'm going to do everything I can not to do this, because I knew there would just be a waste of time for me. So that was an unnecessary war, another unnecessary war, because the North Koreans didn't invade the United States. They were okay. So anyway, they won the war in a sense, and then divided Korea, into two parts. But all these years have gone by, and Korea hasn't, taken over South Korea. Korea hasn't, got into wars or things like that. Now, you might say it's because the United States has soldiers in South Korea. But still, these are unnecessary wars. There's no reason to have them. It's because it's because of the pressure put on the government by the industrialists who produce armaments. Yeah, and they like wars. They make a lot of money when there's wars.
Yeah, particularly the Iraq War was supported by Dick Cheney, the vice president. He was a big time shareholder of Halliburton.
Yeah.
Which was basically a wartime service company.
Yeah.
They make a lot of money every time there is war by supplying stuff. And yeah.
It's nasty, very nasty, because a lot of young kids end up dying, or they get crippled, or who knows what. It's terrible. See, it was much better, in more ancient times, the kings would fight, right? And if one king died, that was it. That was it, finished. The people didn't die. Now all these young kids go into the army, and they get killed.
Yeah, that's why at that time most of the strategies were somehow get to the king,
Yeah.
and
Either
and
that-
then
that-
maybe
that-
to
No, but
Exactly.
actually, the kings would fight also.
yeah.
They were always forefront. Actually, I mean, not forefront.
They were in the war.
They were in the war.
Yeah,
They
definitely.
used to be war in the
As soon as the king died, that was the end of the war.
Yeah.
No
And
war.
Okay, so I think we're finished. Haribol.
Hey, we'll see you in the morning.
Haribol, yes. Can't wait.
Very